Dun, 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 dun. Blink. This is one I have been looking forward to for quite a while now. Ah, man. Ever since, we got Apeface, he obviously knew Snapdragon was coming. And it's just very, very gratifying to have the second of the Horicons in hand. I do quite like how they have like a sub-faction team name, even though it's just the two of them. It makes them a bit like the Bash Brothers from Mighty Ducks. First thing I'm really vibing on is the fact that they just did away with that pearlescent plastic. That was doing nobody any favors. Like, I'd been so excited for Apeface, and then just that pearliness just ruined it for me. So I'm glad, like, even though I'm glad they fixed it for Snapdragon, it does kind of make me hope that they use Apeface again in Kingdom, just to maybe give him, a different plastic quality. This is a really tidy sculpt here on Snappers. I dig it. It looks like on his waist, they've used that slightly fleckled metallic black plastic that's not actually carried over anywhere else on him, interestingly. Only real sort of deco quibble in this form is it's not coming up too badly on camera, but his chest purple is not a great paint match for the molded purple. It just sits a bit flatter. You can see the purple's got a little bit of that metallic fleckle. I quite like that when some of the parts have that poured into the plastic. I'm assuming that, like, as I don't have the G1 version of Snapdragon, I have no choice but to assume the G1 version, like this whole shape becomes maybe the bottom jaw or the top jaw of the dragon. So I'm assuming that's like, that shape is a legacy carryover thing. Otherwise, it looks a little bit like he was wearing the same hat as Cyclonus, and then when Cyclonus saw the horns, he was like, take it off. So when it comes to articulation, you can get his arms right the way around if you're a little bit creative because of some of the kibble. You've got a really good hinge there that gets you nice and far. Elbow, that I would have appreciated had one side of this being sort of shaved a little to make more room for the bicep, especially when it doesn't collapse or anything, so it's not hurting any finished lines. It just would have been nice to get a bit more out of that. Just a little bit. That's all I'm saying. What is nifty is he's got a waist swivel. That's part of transformation, but it's obviously they tried to get it in there. I do think they try and get one in where they can. They know we like it. Universal jointy hips, swivel thigh, bendene. Pretty good. It's a pretty tight 90. And then, the customary ankle tilts that we've come to know and love. Now, accessory-wise, he comes with dos purple blasters, which I found on mine real tight to get into the hands. I've been burnt before when it comes to just blindly trusting that a 5mm peg is a 5mm Port's pal. They're not all the same. So you can just balance there precariously. Pow, 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 pow! Given the kind of like dual pistols thing that he's got going on, again, it would be really nice to get him to be able to bend that elbow a little bit tighter, because then he could get that bit more of like a gunslinger, run and dive, Butch Cassidy, Sundance Kid kind of thing. But he can still get some pretty cool looking wide coverage. If any of you spawns or glitches move, I'll kill every spark sucking last one of you. Doo-doo. So, as I said quickly before, he is a Headmaster. He almost looks a little bit like Beast Wars Megatron. But same dealio that you have with all of your Headmasters. You know how it goes at this point. Yeah. Now, you may be noticing that he's got a little fresher legs and, bicep dorsal fins than your average Headmaster. We'll get into that in a little bit. Who else could I put him in with other than his fellow Horicon? Oh, yeah. Apeface?
Yeah. I thought we were J1.
Yeah,
G1, G1 always, always G1.
I think we might be rare shows. If only Ape Face had this other grey cast plastic, they would look just perfect together. As it is, it has that thing that you kind of got with the Insecticons where you're like, they look like the Insecticons, but they all have slightly different design sensibilities in their finishings and stuff. They don't quite feel unified. With the two of them together, I'm definitely finding that I'm forgiving Apeface for a lot that had irritated me about him in the past. Like, we've definitely got a little bit of the cheerleader effect going on here. Together as well with the way they kind of were in Headmasters. Head on! Dun, 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 head on! Anyway, with the way they were in Headmasters, they kind of, to me, feel like Transformers, Bebop and Rocksteady a little bit. Like, you can just so easily picture him being like,
Hey, boss boy, when are we gonna get to beat some guys up?
patience. If you want him to have a slightly more armored up, shielded sort of look, you can get his mercenary battle master. Is that what they're still called when they're roads? Roadmaster? I feel like Roadmaster's his own whole separate dude, to be honest. Anyway, you can put them on the wrist, which is kind of cool, I guess. I like putting them up on the shoulders. Alright, I suppose this would be if he was, you know, going in heavy gunner mode, because I always imagine that, as well as being a direct blast shield, I imagine they throw out, like, you know, some kind of radial shield. The other thing I thought, which was kind of cool, I noticed he has these ports here on his chesticles. So you can kind of get them into play with these guys a little bit. You know, then you can throw them off over his shoulder a bit like that, give him sort of like a little bit of a bandolier, poncho-y almost quality, a little bit. A little bit. I mean, right, there is something appealing about, you know, having that sort of bigger, more armored configuration. Now, these three scale together quite nicely. In sort of our current sort of loose War for Cybertron siege kind of canon, what we get from these guys is that they're all mercenaries. I like the idea of that because then they're triple changing base with like a vehicle mode, so they can kind of play both sides. It would make sense for them to be chosen for those roles or gravitate towards those roles. God, can't you just see them taking everybody down? Like, I imagine that there's factions within both the Autobots and chiefly the Decepticons who think they have them on lockdown, but I like to think those triple changing vehicle modes and the Headmaster gimmick mean they actually have their own agenda. Because if you didn't have a stake in the Cybertronian war, it's hard to imagine why you'd be a free agent unless A, you're hyper-violent, which I think these three sort of do fit into that category, but then that hyper-violence makes you pretty good agents for a third party. So his instructions have the transformation going vehicle mode, beast mode, and that does seem to be the path of least resistance, so that's what we'll do too. So let's go ahead and get these guns out of his hands. Oh, scary guns. Alright, and a poke off that head. This is like a tight Headmaster. It's a genuinely scary snap in and out for that Headmaster. Anyway, what you want to do, go ahead and flip those feet like that. Come around to the back, flip out these pieces. They sort of double hinge down like that. Flip out that landing gear. A crucial step. Come back out, fold these two halves together. I think you can probably tell where this is going, right? His feet have these little extra sort of spur bits that flip out to fill in that space, which is a really lovely touch. So the back half is where things get a little bit weirder. So you want to go ahead and unplug the two halves of his torso. So that kind of comes away on a hinge like that. And then for these modes, you want to go ahead and bring that arm bracket up. Once you've got those tabbed up, bring this down and plug that whole shooting match in. Then, I'm sure it doesn't come as any great surprise, we're gonna fold out these wing bits, spurs bits, wingity bit bits. And you just kind of bring them around to where you need them. The obvious guide is that shape continuing there. Then it's just a tab on the inside of the wrist, boot, and tab it in. Lastly, you just want to flip him over, get those blasters, and plug them in. They're those cool hexagon ones, so it fits in securely, but you don't have to worry about it getting like, you know, vacuum sealed in and just gripping with the plastic forever and never coming out. And like, there it is. That's a pretty tidy looking spaceship mode. Like a, you know, a fightery looking thing. I like the yellow. It kind of gives me like really early 90s Lego vibes. That gray works really, really well. If you flip it around underneath, I mean, that's not very kibbly at all. The fist, which is, you know, either, depending on your perspective, right? The way these fists work is either genius or really cheeky, because it's just the robot mode fist, but from the top, they're like cone thrusters for your spaceship. Now, my favorite part of the entire figure might actually be the storage for his headmaster. So, oh, that's quite tight, but yeah, we can get in there. Right, the floor has sculpted detail. The inside here has not just like, you know, cyber lines running through. It has actual dials and gauges and some kind of keypad and waveform. And then there's actual painted detail over here again on that cockpit, and the same on the other side, which to me just adds a whole extra degree of play value. Little hidden details like this is where I think concepts like headmasters and things work really, really well, because it hits on the whole Mighty Max of it all. Like, there's little secrets to find. It's almost like Easter eggs embedded in the toys. And the more of this kind of stuff that's in there, the better the whole little dude, you know, pilot transector. This is a deeply personal choice. I don't like to think of them as Nebulons, because that 2 people, 1 body thing is a bit too weird for me to conceptualize. I don't enjoy it. I much prefer the whole colony thing where they were tiny people who gave it legs when the war was kicking up, and to overcome, you know, the size on their new world and be useful, they created powerful transector bodies, right? Because then tying into the whole Power Master thing as well, it's like, yeah, these tiny robots, even though they're tiny, they can still put out a huge amount of spark energy because we're all people. So I like to think of it like their transector body is loosely determined by what their spark is capable of bearing as a load. But anyway, that got real deep. He goes in here. Dude, look at that, right? His hands are on the actual dials. I think, to me, this even lends itself more to the whole transector body thing, because there's probably some kind of neural link, but you might have to do some actual piloting and monitoring, and, you know, you might be able to R2D2 it from there. Can I just say as well, in this mode, he's kind of giving me Vector Sigma from Cybertron vibes. Am I the only one?
Got to find the keys, man!
For a quick comparison, let's go ahead and get him on in there with his fellow Horicon, Ape Face. This is where Ape Face is letting down the team, right? I know what the original Ape Face looks like, and so I get what they had to do, but you don't have to, you know, we're not always so slavishly faithful to G1. This is, even if he just had 1 mode, this is a good vehicle mode. Like, if you were just got a transformer that turns into this, you'd be like, yeah, yep, he could potentially be my favorite, especially with those cockpit decals. Really getting behind this mercenary trio of terror. Here they are with Double Dealer too. One little play nugget that I quite enjoyed was the 5mm ports in his feet are available up here for some extra weapon action. I don't know, I just thought that was fun. Oh man, can you believe there is still 1 more mode? So, to get him into his dragon mode, which is also kind of where the snap comes from, to be honest, but anyway, unpeg those arms, take off those guns, And just do that collapsy thing again. Now, I find it helps to guide the whole twisto thing if at this point you come around, flip out those hands to reveal the oh so well hidden dragon claws. You can unpeg that and just pull that up and sort of out the way as best as you can for now. And then this is where the whole sort of torso shooting match gets interesting. So you want to try and pull this away. It's on a similar kind of hinge. You can try and hinge it down a little bit, and then you want to get these two halves, right? This, you know, leggedy half and this chest piece. You want to bring them down, and you can see how the legs will kind of sit inside that divot a little bit, not a lot. This post here will port in there on both sides once you've kind of got it in the right spot. But then get these legs. Now that it's pretty clear what they are, get them around doing their lizardy thing. So these cute little Yoshi mitts slide forward and then come down, and they're on a bowl joint. But you know, keep them out of the way for now, because then you also want to fold down this chest piece, and this is where the majority of the head comes from. It's like a baby Godzilla. So lastly, with this tail, you kind of just want to fold it down and pull it out a little bit. What's really cool is those toe pieces, they stay with it. So when you have, you know, the bend in the tail that you need for his dragon, it's more of a worm, it all flows and feels nice and natural, which is cool. Now, there's still one last thing we got to do, which is a really cool feature, which I know comes back to the G1. So we've got that head there. We did mention before that, you know, his little partner, his head had a little bit of an unusual flair to it. So what's really cool is these parts here will actually fill out the arms, and this part, his legs, will form the lower jaw of his dragoon. So we'll come around here. You can see the Headmaster clip just lurking up the top there. I have found it can be quite tricky to get it to go. Yeah, there we go. That's in. The only thing I don't quite like about it, right, is that's a lot of force and a lot going on that poor little Headmaster head. Oh, you bastard. There we go. Back in again. So, you know, have it something like that. It's a really cool idea. The execution isn't perfect, and again, you don't want to play with it too much because you just end up so afraid for your little Titan friend. The last thing, just as part of transformation, it is kind of up to you if you want to have, you know, your classic stop motion, regular human knees, or there is the option to bend them around and have sort of more classical sort of dinosaur knees. Because of the way the neck is articulated, he can actually look quite good both ways, depending on, you know, how much of a tail dragging kind of dino you want to be rocking. Look, I think dragon might be a little bit generous. Jetosaurus, Skyrex, he's clearly a dinosaur, right? Like, that's not a dragon. But he does have pretty good articulation for a beast mode, especially like a real G1-y beast mode like this. So this neck actually moves around quite a bit, but it doesn't unlock that chest to get that back and forth, and then this head is on a separate joint. If you get it too outstretched, it looks a little odd, but like, you can get some cool stuff from it. These arms are on little ball jointies, which is cool. You get back and forth, right? Like, that's a pretty good range of dino motion. No waist or anything like that. You get a little bit at the tip of the tail. It would have been kind of cool if you'd been able to use his knees to get an extra point of articulation here somehow. With the way this tip works and with being able to, you know, slot the toes in so it goes back and forth, I think that's pretty cool. Like, that's enough. It's not a big slab hanging back there like it could be. And then obviously you get the same articulation that you did from the arms, which again works well for dino mode. I do always feel like this is strange that this catches so much. Like, am I missing something? Do these arms pop out? I really don't think they do. It's like, it's kind of good that it just misses, but if you put too much of a slant on things, then once you twist those like feet out for slightly more dramatic flair, then it does start to catch. So that's a little bit of a issue, I suppose. I don't know, I really love the Zoids of it all. So to that end, let's get him Zoided up, shall we? Dun, 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 dun. Oh yeah. Look at that. turning him into a raptor with brunt and stuff. That's undeniably cool. How do you not get behind that play pattern? And then, you know, if you've got another snakety bro, you can have him tucked away or deployed out as a shield. For a comparison, obviously we're going to go ahead and get 8-face in there. I think their beast modes complement each other wonderfully. I mean, I know I've been saying it a lot, and I know it's all anyone says about this figure, but that pearlescent plastic, it was a real misstep. Otherwise, they'd just be perfect together. And like, it would have been nice, I know people don't like the battle damage, but it would have been nice, in my opinion, to get a little bit of dry brushing or something, a little bit of wash work, I don't know, just something on Snapdragon to try and pair them deco-wise even more when we're using different plastics.
Go, play, have fun.
Fun?
Master say have fun.
Here's the, you know, the War for Cybertron mercenary crew doing their thing all together. Who are you working for? They all scale together quite well. They all look pretty cool. And for the G1 of it all, here's a bunch of Headmaster Beasts. And here's a bunch of tiny heroes all together, just doing what they can with the abilities they were given in their transector bodies to save their world from the tyranny of Cybertron. I thought as we close out, we could get a little bit anime end creditsy with it and have everyone posed out with their transectors. I can remember just wholeheartedly consuming all of Headmasters when an import DVD version came out. I can't quite remember. It was awesome. It was so many discs. And that made me just fall in love with these characters I'd never really heard of until that point. So it's just so great to be able to finally get in there and finish off that set.